Hello, everyone. Hi, Mikey. Hello, everyone. Dequi.
Hey, see, I got here.
Woo! I'm so proud of you.
I I don't remember everything, but I remember some things.
You
I
got it.
see
You
that it
got it. You're
says
here.
Sekou.
Yes. I
And
just
what about
invited him
Sekou?
on.
Okay,
So,
he's coming.
hi,
Okay.
Sekou. Hello. Oh my goodness. I don't even know what to say right now. This is a huge deal um, for me and for all my followers. It truly is an honor to have both of you on Instagram with me. I'm trying to behave because it's a huge deal. Thank you so much, Dequi and Sekou, for joining me. And hello to everyone who is coming on. Yes, you guys are noticing my books in the back. Got Asada right here, Angela right here.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite books. But welcome everyone. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I think Sekou got off. I think he's coming back on.
Did he
Let's
fall off?
see.
Something happened?
Let's see. Wait, I think he's still here. I'm gonna invite him again. Um, let's see.
There he is.
Okay,
He's
great.
back.
We're back. Okay. Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Manney. And I am a teacher here in Newark, New Jersey. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is activism and the fight for liberation of all Black people. And this month, I'm doing a Black History Month speaker series where I'm kind of having discussions with different Black people in different walks of life just to kind of get their experience and to have a discussion on how to advance the people forward. And today we have the pleasure of having Black feminist writer and educator dequi Kioni Sadiki with us, and also veteran Black Panther Party member Sekou Odinga. And today we're going to be talking about activism, specifically activism from the 1960s all the way up until this point, talking about the differences of that, and then also hearing Dequi and Sekou's personal experiences in this fight for freedom. So I'm really excited. So to start us off, I'm going to pass the mic to Dequi and Sekou to kind of tell us a little bit more about who they are and why they're so important in this fight for liberation. And then we're going to open up the floor to talk a little bit more about activism. So any one of you can go ahead and take the mic.
Is my
Yes.
mic on?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm a former political prisoner of war. I'm a I was an original member of the New York chapter of the Black Panther Party and an original member of the international section of the Black Panther Party and a soldier in the Black Liberation Army. From that struggle in those different formations, I wind up being a political prisoner of war. Uh, I don't know. I guess what got me involved was the conditions of my people, the love of my people, the love of my family, the love of self. You know, there's it's hard for me to see what's happening to us and not want to do something about it. I've never been one of those people who could turn the other cheek. If you hit me on one side of the face, I'm on one side of your face and not turn the other for you to hit again. So that's what kind of motivated me to get involved, to struggle, looking at the conditions that we were involved in. I mean, all of my life, I basically was born and raised in New York, but my parents were uh, civil rights followers. They were Martin Luther King disciples, and before then, they come out of the Pentecostal church, so they've always kind of been involved with people, black people, and the struggle of black people. They're like, we come out of a black community in South Jamaica, Queens, and back in my youth, people they still had unity in the word community. Words that there was some unity there. People knew each other. They helped each other. They did. One neighbor was hurting, was sick, or lost a job, or the other neighbors would help. They would bring them plates of food. They would do the different things that they could with the little that they had, because none of us had a whole lot, but what they had, they shared. So that's part of my tradition. That's part of what I come up with, is that struggling together. So as I got older and I started learning about, actually it was Malcolm X. We were just talking about him a little earlier also. It was listening to him and mostly reading about him when I was very young, when I was in my teens. Uh, the things he was saying that we needed to be doing and what he was doing made me want to get involved and be involved in the things that he was talking about. So that's what kind of brought me into the movement, and I started following him and following other radical leaders, like one of the brothers that was with him was my first political activity was with Herman Ferguson. Uh, he was part of what they claim he was part of RAM, a Revolutionary Action Movement. He was locked up for supposedly targeting some civil rights leaders uh, to to assassinate them, which he always never did. That was something they were just trying to frame him to get him off the streets. So, but so that's kind of, it was those type of things that really got me initially involved. I guess I'll let my wife say something without hogging the mic.
Thank you for sharing. Dequi?
Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. I think that you shared a history lesson with folks, that like the history that we don't often learn about. So it was good that you were telling that part of your story that's a part of our story. So um about myself, I am an educator. I work with high school students in the New York City Department of Miseducation, because that's what happens to our children: miseducation, unless they have teachers, educators who really care about them learning the truth. We all go through these systems that miseducate us. So I work with high school students. I've edited books. I'm a poet. I'm an artist. I work on behalf of and with U.S. held political prisoners and prisoners of war, many of whom were members of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army. People who have been in prison for the past 3 or 4, 5 decades, longer than many people have been. I think they call young people millennials or Z. So
Yeah.
they've been in
Yeah.
Generation Z, right? So
So
they've
I'm
been
a
in, they
millennial. I'm a
you're
millennial.
a, okay. Thank
Yes,
you,
yes,
Manny. So we have people who are in prison longer than you've been alive. So try to,
yes.
like, for your peers that are here, try to imagine someone being locked up in prison for as long as you've been alive, and not for any crime, quote crime, but for fighting for the liberation of African people, people of African descent born in America, right? Participating in the Black freedom struggle. Lots of folks in history, the mainstream, they glamorize and they champion and they big up the civil rights movement, but they don't big up, they criminalize and demonize the more radical revolutionary Black Power movement or Black Liberation movement. And so the people that I work with and on behalf of, being a voice for and with, are those people that are part of the revolutionary radical movements of that time.
Wow.
So I was not a member of the Black Panther Party. I was, however, part of another organization that came or like stands on the shoulders of the Black Panther Party. It was called the Black Panther Collective. And it was an organization that was made up of people, veteran members of the Black Panther Party and other activists, to carry on the tradition of and the work of the Black Panther Party. So we did cop watch, meaning just like the Black Panther Party would go out and watch the cops interact with people in the community, we did that to make sure that people weren't being brutalized and harassed in life-threatening ways. There was food, feeding the people program. So it was a food distribution and an introduction to political prisoners, because part of the work that we did was going to visit political prisoners. So that's how I came into the work. And it's like Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. Well, once my eyes began to be open, and now I'm an adult, right? And I'm learning all of these things that have been kept from me, right? And rendered invisible, really radical aspects of our history, African history in this country, as well as around the world, but particularly in this country, because I'm an African born here in this stolen land that they call America. But Maya Angelou says that when you know better, you do better. So now I was learning all of these things, and all this information was being presented to me. So then my task and my obligation and my responsibility was to act on that information and that new knowledge that I had.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that you said that you brought up that Maya Angelou quote about knowing better to do better. And I think that this concept of knowledge is really, really important when it comes to discussions of the Black liberation movement or the fight for our people's freedom. And I think, and you said you were an educator, and I'm an educator as well. I'm a teacher. I teach 12th graders here in Newark. And it always blows my mind when sometimes I ask them questions like, oh, y'all should know Assata Shakur. Everyone should know who Assata Shakur is. Do you guys know Sundiata Acoli? Do you know Jalil Muntakim? Do you know these people who've done so much work for our people? And they almost always say no, which is really disheartening, because I think that once, especially for history classes, I'm not a history teacher. So for those that teach history in communities of color, we notice that once we get to that unit of anything that has to do with Black people, we learn a little bit about slavery and about Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr., and then we kind of just slide over everything else. It's kind of like we skip a whole generation of work that people should know about. And I wanted to get your thoughts on how best to bring this knowledge into classrooms for our young people. Because I think that nowadays, in comparison to the 60s, I think nowadays we have an idea of what activism is supposed to look like, or we have an idea of what fighting for our people is supposed to look like. But much of the work that both of you, for example, have done in your in the fight for liberation goes unnoticed. And people don't understand that people like the two of you have pretty much set the blueprint for activism in this country. So I wanted to get your thoughts on how we can bring more discussions or more lessons on the work that you both have done, either when it comes to political imprisonment, when it comes to the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, the Black Panther Coalition. How do we bring more knowledge about those things into the classrooms?
Wow. Well, thank you for that. First, I just want to say I didn't do the blueprint. I stand for this country or this city. I stand on the shoulders of people who have come before me and before us, and we carry the work forward, right? We have been struggling on this stolen land. We have been struggling for freedom since 1619. And so even though we were kidnapped and enslaved, and they quote teach about slavery, they don't really teach about it because they never talk about resistance. They don't talk about the ways that people resisted and how frequently and how they punish people for resistance, which is why we have political prisoners, because they mean to punish people. And I love something that someone in the chat wrote about deconstructing the history, the teaching of history, right? Those systems. That's what we have to do, right? So, like, making it plain. It doesn't matter what we're talking about in terms of the issues that when we're dealing with white supremacy, racism, poverty, homelessness, inadequate health care, access to health care, we can talk about the Black Panther Party. Oh, you eat breakfast or lunch in school? Do you know how that started? Because prior to the Black Panther Party, there were no free breakfast programs. Prior to the Black Panther Party, there was no testing. Sickle cell anemia is something that affects people of African descent. There was no testing of sickle cell anemia. Today, every Black baby that's born is routinely checked for sickle cell anemia, the trait or the sickle cell anemia, the free health clinics, the food pantries. So we can start as basic as that, right? How did that come to be? Because nothing happened because this government thought it was the right thing to do. They did it because it was a demand that was placed. So we can keep it simple and just asking the questions like, how do you think that came to be? When you said Harriet Tubman, they have so mythologized and reduced any person in history, right? They reduced their history and her story to something that's kind of like whitewash, right? Harriet Tubman was a warrior. She didn't just conduct the Underground Railroad. She was a medicine woman. When people were running away and escaping slavery, she knew what herbs to give them to quash their hunger. She knew what herbs to give the babies to stop them from crying. She knew what herbs they can eat that weren't poisonous. She knew what to put on their feet when their feet were being cut and bloodied. So, and then she led an expedition in the Civil War that freed hundreds, right? And not one person was lost, but they don't talk about that. So that's why it becomes important for educators to know, because you cannot teach what you do not know. That's why we need people who look like the students that they're teaching, who have a desire to not just teach, but a desire to learn, right? Because I can't teach about Harriet if I don't know about her. And we're learning, and that doesn't mean that we're going to know everything all the time. But do we have a willingness to say, well, I need to find out more because I have these young minds in front of me, and I have to be able to get them engaged and curious about learning so that they're not turned off to it. Because if they just keep hearing the same thing about Harriet Tubman, oh, the Underground Railroad, Martin Luther King, oh, I Have a Dream, Malcolm X, oh, by any means necessary. That is not the sum total of the greatness of those people. So, I'm sorry, babe.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, honey.
Well, I mean, she said it all just about. So, but to add a little to it, I think what she was saying at the end is really key, that our educators got to have the desire to teach the true history, to teach what has really happened in our sojourn over here in this here racist country. One of the things I think that once they decide that this is something that they want to do, read themselves so they can learn and suggest those reading materials to their students. And then teach them, give a book for people to read, for our students to read, and each chapter discuss it. Learn from each other, talk about the pros and cons of what they read. Can this happen here? Does this happen here? What can we do about it when it happens here? And some places they can invite people. I've been invited to come and speak to her students at her school. I've been invited to speak at many different schools, mostly universities though. I don't know if high schools do a lot of that, but I've been to a couple of high schools to speak and to talk about our history, the history of the Black Panther Party, why political prisoners are political prisoners, what is a political prisoner, etc. I've been into different schools, so those schools that where teachers can invite people like myself, people like Jalil Muttaqin, people that knows this history, like my wife, like people who did this work. There's a number of us out nowadays. I can think of 5 or 6 right off my head of former political prisoners and prisoners of war that would probably be available to come and speak in a class. Puerto Ricans, white anti-imperialists, and New Africans, black folks. So I think there are a number of ways that we can teach this history. Yeah, but it starts with people wanting to know and then learning themselves. When I say people, I mean teachers. Teachers wanting to know and learning themselves, and then they're in a better position to teach the subject. You can't teach, like she said, what you don't know. If you don't know, you can't teach it. But we live in an information age now. Information is out there. It's so readable. There's so many books, there's so many things online, there's so many articles that people can read and can learn from and can then use to teach.
Yeah.
I just want to add that to what she said, because basically I agree with everything she was saying.
Yeah. And I think that simple things. Put up a piece of, if you have your own classroom, put a piece of paper up, a poster board with a whole bunch of names. They ask, who is that? Why is that person important? Look them up. Find out. Make a list of books, right? Like you have those books behind you. Sometimes people say, oh, that's I like that cover, because we are, visual. So when we see a picture or image is colorful, it kind of like draws us in. So there are ways to do it that, because this system does not, like Dr. Clark, John Henrik Clark said, and Malcolm said, we cannot expect this system to teach our children. A place that doesn't treat you right is not going to teach you right. So there's other ways, right? There's other ways that we can do it, because we are visual people. You have your head wrapped. You have African fabric on your head. That's a teachable moment when you walk into a class, right? Sekou got on a t-shirt. I know it's red, black, and green. I don't know what the t-shirt says, but those are
Republic,
red, black, and green. What do those colors represent, right? So there's all kinds of ways that we can do it that's not necessarily in a lesson plan, but it's just like the sight of us in front of our children, helping them to see that they are brilliant beyond measure, right? That there are people that's telling them that they can't be scientists and doctors and engineers, when African people created all that. African and indigenous people created all that there is.
Thank you. Oh,
another thing, let me just say, we don't have to wait until you get to high school. Start teaching in elementary school. Start teaching in preschool. I've spoken to preschool students, and the questions are unbelievable. How their insight into what's going on. So I would say don't just wait till high school. Get them at 4, get them at 5, get them at 6, and just make it plain to them. Make it simple, like she was saying. Using pictures is often a good way to start. I know at the elementary school that not the elementary school, the preschool that I've been invited to on a number of occasions, they have pictures of all political prisoners and people who have struggled for us, not just the Malcolms and the Martins, but the Sundiatas and the Asadas and the Batulus and the Ed Poindexters, and you ask any of those young students who the people are on there, and they'll tell you who they are and
Right.
where they are and why they up there on their walls. They start learning at a very early age, and we should start teaching at a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that was something that I feel like God really pricked me to do this year. Because in my classroom, I have a whole wall, because I teach English literature. So I have a whole wall of different African American and Latino writers on the wall. And one day I was like, okay, extra credit. Go to the wall and pick a name, and you have to write a 1-page paper on whoever you pick in order to get extra credit. So then that pushed the students to learn about someone that they didn't know before. And I remember one time, I think we were in class and I was talking to them about, I forgot his name. He was just recently on death row, and I think through the efforts of a lot of phone calls, they got him off. I think his name is Darius Jones, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in class, that conversation about having this innocent Black man on death row opened the door for me to talk to them about Zolo Azania. And I'm pretty sure y'all are familiar with Brother Zolo. And I got the chance to talk to them. And what blew my mind was that I think one thing that I had to definitely like forgive myself for was I just kept thinking maybe they might not want to hear about it. Maybe it's the information is too heavy for them, but that is a lie. They
Right.
asked question after question after question after question. They even begged me to call Zolo on the phone so that they can like talk to him. And I did call, but unfortunately, he couldn't pick up. But they were so interested in learning more about this information because, as you said, as you refer to it as the miseducation of our young people, and a lot of them are not learning about some of these things in class. So I think I am trying my best to make efforts to get the students to learn more about these topics. But I think one thing that I really do want to talk about is the concept of activism and where it comes from, what it is, and how and what it looks like. Because I think that if we were to look at, I mean, I wasn't alive in the '60s, so I feel like I don't have a firsthand, sight of what happened there and what many of the people who are alive at that time were fighting for. But from what I've seen nowadays, it does seem like, and for those of you who are on the call who might understand me, you can of course chime in and agree or disagree, that much of the activism kind of seems just a little bit performative. We don't know if people are actually doing that groundwork to aid those who are being oppressed. And sometimes people think that just the post on social media is all that they can do to raise awareness. And that's one of the reasons why I actually love Sophia so much. Because her book correspondence, for those of you who don't know, one of my very, 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 very good friends, Sophia Dawson, is a Brooklyn-based artist, and she's done a lot of work with political prisoners and highlighting their stories. And she recently wrote a book called Correspondence that pretty much is the culmination of all the letters that she was writing, all of the different political prisoners in one book. And every time I look through that book, I feel like I get so emotional because there's so much that I'm learning, not just about her, but the people that she's speaking to. And it just makes me think that this is concrete work. She's doing groundwork. She is raising money for political prisoners. She is raising awareness for people who are imprisoned. She is highlighting the stories of those who've done so much work for the people. So I just want to get your thoughts on what activism is and what it's not. Because I know that nowadays people have an idea of what it's supposed to look like, but I feel like we have a misunderstanding of what activism is. So I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Okay. Babe, do you want to go first?
I'll take a hit at it. I think, to me, activism, I mean, all right, it starts with the word action. It comes from that word, I think. And so activism is actively getting involved in the political struggles in your area or from where you at. It's
Mm.
actually looking at the problems and getting with someone else who sees the same problems you see, and working with them to lessen those problems, or to eradicate those problems. Being involved. One of the things I think is kind of key that I heard you mention about people being charged with crimes that they didn't do. That happens way too often to African people in this country. But everybody is not in prison because they didn't do anything.
Mm.
Some people are in prison because they did something, because
Mm.
they did act. And it's important that people know that they have a right to act. They
Mm.
have a right to challenge the status quo. They have a right to oppose uh, 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 to oppose poverty, to oppose brutality, to oppose the murder of our people in the street by the so-called servants of the people, the police. People have a right to oppose that. Now, the state criminalizes that opposition. The state will criminalize that activity, but we should not accept that narration that our people who struggle to oppose all these areas that I just mentioned are criminals. Just because they make that a crime, because they got the power to make that a crime, don't
Mm.
mean it's really a criminal act.
Mm.
People are, slavery was legal to for a so-called slave master to beat, to burn, to tattoo. What do you call it when they
Branding.
Brad.
Branding. Mm.
brand a human being? All that was legal. These are and people who fought against that were criminalized. Those activities were criminalized, and if they were locked up, they were political prisoners. All the
Mm.
things that Martin Luther King got locked up for made him a political prisoner. But
Mm.
that don't mean that he was a criminal because they criminalized what he was doing, or that what
Mm.
I did. I went to prison for helping to liberate. When I say liberate, I mean to helping Asada Shakur to come out of prison, that she was, what I feel, was illegally imprisoned.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I did 33 years for doing that. That was my activism. That was part of my activism. I did 33 years for that,
Mm-hmm.
but that don't make me a criminal because they criminalize that activity. So to me, I just wanted to point that point out, that everybody that's been in prison and become political prisoners or prisoners of war, that they're not necessarily innocent in the sense of they didn't do anything. What they're innocent is when they say I'm not guilty. What they're saying is I'm not guilty of a crime. I I, I pled not guilty also, and that's what I was saying to them. I'm not guilty of a crime. You calling me a criminal and saying I'm guilty of this crime? No, I'm not guilty of a crime. What I am is an activist. I'm a revolutionary. I'm someone who don't believe that you have a right to murder us in the streets. I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe you have a right to lock us up for the rest of our lives because we oppose poverty, because we oppose brutality, because we oppose murder. I don't believe you. You are the criminal, but
Mm.
you just have the power right now to criminalize the positive work that people are doing. So activism to me is one who actively get involved in the political struggles of their local areas, or the national area, or internationally. But the people who actively get involved in the political struggle, those
Mm.
are the people that's activism to me.
Right.
Mm.
And activism, I mean, on the political level is what Sekou is talking about with people resisting oppression and injustice, right? When he says about criminalizing, Harriet Tubman is called a hero or a shero today, but when she was alive, she was criminalized.
Yeah.
They was hunting her, wanted dead or alive, and she had a bounty on her head, just like Assata Shakur has a bounty on her head. Nat
Right.
Turner, today they call him a hero. In his time, they murdered him. They executed him for organizing a rebellion. So it's like when we talk about countering the narrative and educating, it's saying how people talk about people when they're no longer here, when that time is past, right? Because our ancestors were living, breathing human beings in their time in the 1700s, 1800s, just like we are living, breathing human beings in 2022. But the way that the state works to desensitize people or mythologize or commodify our stories is to, you know, revisionist, right? They tell it in different ways. But no, we must teach our children the truth. I have never had a student that didn't want to learn. We have to ask what happens by the time a kid gets to high school, if they get to high school, right? Because before they walk out, because when they first started, they wanted to learn. They would raise their hand. They wanted to carry their book bag. They couldn't wait to go to school. What happens by the time they're in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade when they're like, this don't got nothing to do with me. I'm out of here, right? So we got to peel back those layers and deal with that. But specifically to your question about activists, some people are going to be activists like what Sekou is talking about, joining organizations, right? Other people might it might be cleaning up their block. They might not like all the litter and the garbage on their block. They may say every Sunday morning, we're going to go outside and we're going to clean. There's a street light that needs to be up because there's a lot of accidents on this block. We're going to do that. There are children that don't have any adult supervision. We're going to create a collective that takes care of those children. There's things going on in my school and that my child goes to. I'm going to join the PTA and I'm going to be active in the PTA to change what I see that I don't like. So there's different levels of activism, right? But it is identifying what are the things that's harmful in your community and what are the things that you would like to see corrected and how can you correct them? How can you work to change those conditions? And even seeing, well, did anybody else ever do anything like this? Maybe I can read and learn about people who did that before me. So then I can say, well, that's how they did it, because maybe I don't know how to do it. But I can study to see how somebody else did it.
Right. I love that you brought up the example of cleaning up your block, because I think that, and I'm guilty of this too. I think when I was younger, in college, that was where I was doing much of, I would say, my radical activism work. I went to a predominantly white institution in Vermont, and I and a few of my peers decided to fight against some of the hate crimes that we were experiencing on campus. And it was all the students. If you weren't white, some way, somehow you were targeted. The Jewish students were targeted. Those in the LGBTQ community were targeted. Those who were immigrants from China and all of these different places were targeted. So when I notice some of the things that were going on, just as what Sekou was saying earlier about actively getting involved in the issues that are going on in your community. That was what I and some of my peers were doing. So I actually decided to write a statement to the president of the school to let him know these are the conditions that the students of color on this campus are dealing with. And I printed out copies of that statement. I had all of my friends sign it. We took a picture with it. We put it on our Facebook, our Instagram, our Snapchat. It was everywhere. I even got some of my friends to print out hundreds of copies of it, and we slid it under all the different doors of the different professors on campus. It was in the cafeteria. It was at the firehouse. We had it everywhere. So what had happened was, I think one of the students, and I am 100% sure that there had to be some sort of a white supremacist like community on our campus. And one of the students took my statement and sent it to Trump conservative websites. So then my face and my location and my name were on these websites. So then now we're being targeted by people in Kentucky, Tennessee, all these random places down south. It was really, really weird, to the point where we had to be escorted to class by public safety. It got really out of hand. But after that, I and my friends decided to lead a march on campus to address these things. And we strategically did it on a day where the president was having a meeting with all the faculty. So they all saw us, and they all pretty much had no choice but to listen to our demands that day. But I noticed that once I left that environment and I came back to Newark, New Jersey, which is where I'm from, I am surrounded by a lot of people that look like me. And although there are a lot of issues that are happening in my community, I felt a little bit lost. And I think that is because of the closed-minded idea I had about activism, because I thought that activism is just doing a march, or it's just you know, printing out copies of a statement and passing it around. But I had such a narrow-minded view of what it was. And it wasn't until I became a teacher and I thought, whoa, I have 75 of the most impressionable young people in front of me right now. So even though I'm not out, pounding the pavement in the streets like I used to, what can I do in this classroom that's going to make a difference for the students? And I think that's a note that I want a lot of people to take as well, because activism, as Sekou said, is us being active in our communities. And that's not always going to look like us staging a sit-in or doing a march. It's going to look like cleaning up our communities. It's going to look like telling my students who Zolo Azania is, because his name is not in the history books in our curriculum, and that's what it's going to look like. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, and that you both were able to give us an understanding of activism. Is that Jalil Muntakim? Who's commenting?
Oh yeah, that is Jalil. Yes, he's watching.
Yes.
Hey,
Oh,
Jalil.
hi, Jalil. Jalil was also a former political prisoner. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And also veteran member of the Black Panther Party, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did
yes.
almost 50 years, 2 months short of 50 years of political imprisonment.
Wow.
He went to prison when he was 19 years old.
Wow. Jalil, you're more than welcome to join us if you like. I don't mind phoning you, and you can let me know. I don't want to put any pressure on you. But speaking of political imprisonment, I think that that's something that a lot of people my age still don't know about. It wasn't until I met Sophia that I began to learn more about the unlawful imprisonment, of radical activists or people who are just doing work in their communities. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I know, Sekou, even in my research about you, you are in prison for over 33 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I know dequi, you are the leader of his defense committee to make sure that he was released. So I would love to hear more about this topic of political imprisonment, and how we as a people, or young people who are like me, can get involved.
Well, political prisoners are individuals who are in prison for their political activities, writing, support of oppressed people against an oppressive government, a regime, a country, right? Prisoners of war are people who engage in military actions against an oppressive government, right? And because, as Sekou said, resistance is criminalized. Well, when it's Black, brown, and indigenous people, because those people that stormed the Capitol, they haven't been criminalized. They call them patriots, right? But we know that if that was however many people, that was thousands of people that were not white, that were Black, brown, indigenous, climbing, scaling the wall, entering that building, breaking stuff up, we know that it would have been a massacre, right? So resistance is criminalized when it's oppressed people fighting for their self-determination, their liberation, right, and justice. And so with that resistance comes repression. And the repression is to punish people. It's like You're from Ghana, right, Manney?
Yes, yes.
Right. So when I went to Ghana a couple of years ago, we went to one of the dungeons, and they showed us the cell where they kept the people who were rebelling, and they kind of like just put them in there to die. And they did that to make an example of them, to say, if you don't go along to get along, we're going to put you in this room and you're going to die. Right. And so that's what they do with our freedom fighters. Right. They put them in prison, and they render them invisible, and they demonize them and talk bad about them and criminalize them and distort that history, so then people are separate from them. Right. And so, but we have to know that as bad as it is for Black, brown, and indigenous folks right now in 2022, whatever has happened from 1619 to now that has improved the quality of people's lives, even in a little inch, happened because of struggle. Because you don't get your freedom by your oppressor giving it to you. You get your freedom by fighting for it. Like the Haitian people, they were the first country to rid slavery, right? They fought for it. The French didn't just say, okay, we want to free all African people. No, you fight for it. And in the process of fighting for it, you are demonized. So the way that this country and their corporate media presents any country in the world that is fighting for their self-determination, for their right to exist, for their justice, liberation, they are always demonized. And that's why people don't know about political prisoners. That is on purpose, because how could they tell people that they're political prisoners if you're free? They teach that this is a land of freedom. This is a land of democracy. So they would be contradicting themselves, which they do all the time in their behavior and their actions. But to acknowledge political prisoners would say that you have to acknowledge that you're doing some dastardly, inhumane, as Sekou said, criminal things. And so political prisoners exist just like they exist all over the world, because all over the world, people are continuing to fight against oppressive systems, right? It's only here in this country where political prisoners are marginalized and forgotten about, even in activist circles. And I am glad to see that over the last several years that has been changing. But I've been doing this work for like 30 years, and it was really hard because people, well, weren't they guilty of this? What did they do? Why are they in prison? They're in prison because because Black resistance has been criminalized.
Wow. Sekou, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I'll let it go.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, look, I just see a chat, babe. Somebody said in Senegal, there's a neighborhood called Yafe El Fula.
Well, he was a great young man, so good for them.
Yes. We carry it on everywhere.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I think a lot of people don't know about political prisoners. Now, what's a way for people to kind of get involved in raising more awareness? I know currently right now, I follow the Sundiata Acoli Instagram, and I'm being kept up to speed as to what's going on with that. And Sundiata Acoli's been in jail for, is it like 53 years? I'm not really sure. I forgot the exact number.
Yeah, 48, 49 years. I think he was captured in 73, if I remember correctly. And he's been in ever since then. So I guess that would make it 48 years.
48.
And he's 84 years old. And he is the co-defendant of Assata Shakur. He was on that turnpike. So when people say her name, they should also be learning about Sundiata Acoli and Kamal Sadiki. Right, because they're connected, and there are other people that are inside, that are still inside, that are connected. None of us exist in a vacuum. Assata doesn't exist in a vacuum. Sekou doesn't exist in a vacuum. Right, political prisoners don't exist in a vacuum. They're connected to movements, right, against oppression, and so they don't operate as individuals. And that's part of the work. So how people can get involved, there's the Jericho movement. People can all the Jericho movement.com website is a website that was that tells about political prisoners, and people can find out where they are, what their cases were about. We just had a tribunal that said we still charge genocide, and the U.S. by an international panel of jurists was found still guilty of genocide of
Wow.
Black, brown, and indigenous people.
Wow.
So there, you know, what people can do, just like this, what you're doing, right? People have Facebook. They got, I don't know, all these social media things, but you can post about them. People can call. They can do a teaching, like we said. We go to people's classes. We go to universities. We go to a church. We go anywhere to talk about them. Have community gatherings. People have a community organization. Invite us in to come and talk about them. Post on social media. We ask people to call their state representatives, their assembly people, and governor's office, and all those things, and to say it's enough is enough. Mm-hmm. People should be let home. And a lot of people have campaigns, but a lot of people don't. So people go to the JerichoMovement.com website. They can see who has a freedom campaign.
And join those campaigns. Write the prisoners themselves and find out from them what they can do. That's another way to get involved. But join these organizations that are existing today, that are working to help release, help bring about an understanding of who these political prisoners are, and why they should be released. There's many, like she was saying, there's committees, a lot of the political prisoners have committees. Find out who those committees are and where you can contact them and see, can you join them? The organization she was just talking about, the Spirit of Mandela, has put out a call for people to come and join them and to work to not only help free political prisoners, but to help do a whole lot of other things, you know. That go online and find out who these people are and where they are and how you can get involved with them, because there's so many ways to get involved. I mean, if you politically active, you're involved. You know, just so get involved with those who are already involved. That's the first way to start off. And as you go along, if you find that people are not doing what you think needs to be done, try to find people who think like you and start what you think needs to be done. And then try to coalesce, to join with, like your organization, with other organizations, so that we're not out there doing it all by ourselves. The Spirit of Mandela has called for activists to create what they call community centers, people centers, people-centered, and which is to organize within your own community around issues that are in your community and connecting with others in your area and around the country, so that we are not just working in small little groups, that we can kind of organize ourselves under one umbrella, where we can have, instead of a few people, 30, 40 people, we can have hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of people, so that we can really have some power to do what we need to do. We got 50 million African people in this country. Imagine if half of us was all working under one umbrella, 25 million people. We could control the narrative in this country, the political narrative. We could put in and out of national office who we wanted. We could have some real Black people in that White House, instead of that guy that they pretended was Black, who came in here to work for the corporate America. But he didn't do very much for us as the African people, but he certainly did plenty for the banks and for the big corporations, especially like the automotive industry. You know, he saved them. But he didn't save the black schools. They still suffering. They still going through it. They still having to close down for lack of funds. He could have did a whole lot more for us, but he didn't. Now, if we were in power, if we had the power of, say, 25 million votes, there's very little we couldn't influence with that kind of power.
Right. Right.
So that's where not just organizing, but education.
Yeah.
Right. When you say what can people do, people can create with your group of friends. Say we're gonna have a political education. We're gonna take a book. We're gonna take Asada's book, and we're gonna read it, and we're gonna discuss it. And then after we read that book for a month, we're gonna take another book, and we're gonna read that book and discuss it. So then people begin to develop an analysis and a critical thinking about what they're reading and why, right? Like when you opened up, what inspires people to resist, right? What inspires people to want to change things and make the sacrifices that they do? Because all of us are born, people are ordinary people, but ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they have the thinking to do it, right? And so that means challenging what this system teaches us about ourselves. And it's very difficult to do that in isolation. We need each other.
Right.
You know, when African people say it takes a village, when we say we are our sister and brothers keepers, that's not just a quote. That is a lifestyle. That is a value. And this system has worked to deconstruct that, to destroy that. And so we have to kind of get back to that. And we do that by creating those little enclaves where we do that, so that then those enclaves can get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. And that is so true. And I love that you brought up the quote about we are our brother's keeper. I think sometimes we forget that a lot, especially as a people. And unfortunately, because we've forgotten that, we've seen some of our own go down, or we've seen some of our own suffer when they could have gotten the help that they needed. And one of the reasons why I remember I texted you the minute this idea came to my mind. I said, we have to do it, because there's not enough people that know. There's not enough people that know about political imprisonment. There's not enough people that know about groups such as the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, the Spirit of Mandela Coalition. People don't know about these groups. And if I have to go on Instagram Live every day in order to let people know, then that's just what I'm gonna have to. That's what I'm gonna have to do. So thank you so much for even bringing that up. And one final thing that I wanted to quickly discuss before we got off. One thing that I've noticed is that the beautiful thing about the fighting spirit that our people have is that it never dies. It never goes away. We still hold on to it, and we still fight for the liberation of all of our people. And I think that the both of you are still doing that after everything that you've experienced, after everything that you've done, including, I'm sure, Jalil Muntakim. There's so much that you guys are still doing to this day. And I know that there was one thing that you wanted me to highlight on the flyer, which was that both of you are members of the Spirit of Mandela Coalition. And I would love for y'all to let us know a little bit about what that coalition is and the kind of work that both of you do with them.
Okay. So the coalition was the brainchild of I should say the tribunal that the coalition did was the brainchild of Jalil Muntakim, who was one of our political prisoners, and he's out now. And what it really, again, when I said we stand on the shoulders of and we carry forward the work, people think of genocide as something that happened either to Jewish people, or to indigenous people when the land was stolen. But there is a genocide that is ongoing, that it's not one event that happens for a few years or a few months or anything like that, Rwanda or those places. We're talking about a genocide that has been happening since 1492.
Wow.
Right? And so this the spirit of Mandela came together to put together this tribunal that was to say we still charge the United States with genocide. And that is standing on the heels and standing on the shoulders of Paul Robeson, a great African.
I love Paul Robeson. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
If you don't know who Paul Robeson is, please take the time to look him up. When I was 15, I told all of my teachers that I want to be the next Paul Robeson.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So him with William Patterson, they charged the United States with genocide. They said we charge genocide. So this tribunal that the spirit of Mandela came together to do the same thing, to say we still charge genocide. 50 years later, we still charge genocide. And it was based on 5 different charges that have to do with police violence, police terror, murder, and violence of Black, brown, indigenous people, hyper mass incarceration, the disparities in healthcare, and environmental injustice, right? Like there was a sister that was part of the tribunal that testified. There's a section in New Orleans that they call Cancer Alley because the dumping of chemical waste is so bad that everybody there has cancer. Like they come, the babies come to this side with cancer, right? And so when they was talking about the People's Senate out of that tribunal with the U.S. being found guilty of those 5 charges, is now to take that work to the people and create create bodies of people that are doing the work in this kind of like a gathering. People don't have to say the word Senate, but we say Senate, so that we're tackling those issues so that we can do exactly what Sekou is saying, that we organize ourselves to the point where we are a power structure within ourselves to eradicate those issues of genocide that are continuing to plague our people and crush the life and the breath and the spirit out of our people and out of our children.
Wow.
Sekou, you want to add something?
No, just basically the same thing. You know, that it's important that this work goes forward because we're still an oppressed people. And this is you talked about what can we do. This is something we can do. We can come together. We can come together under this banner, or create our own banner to come together and bring it under this banner and work together. Because what we really have to do is unify. Everybody knows that. I mean, if you ask people what do Black people need to do, they go first usually say unify. Unity is important. So this is a way of unifying around the work, not just unifying for the sake of saying we are unified, but around the work, creating the structures that will allow us to do the work in the different regions and the different areas of the country where we happen to find ourselves, and we all work together. So if you're working around political prisoners, if I raise my voice to help you, that's one more voice. If 1,000 more over here raise their voice to help you, that's 1,000 more. If we don't work around housing, if we're doing work around hunger, if we're doing work around lack of insurance, medical care, if we're doing work around education, we have that many more people to join us in that work. And that's what we're talking about, is unifying, creating organization that would allow us to work harmoniously together to make a regional issue, a local issue, become a national issue. You know, so it's very important work, and it's the type of work that can eventually lead us to real power. You know, we're talking about in every region of this country organizing, and all of us working in harmony together. When we get to national issues, then we got millions of people to work with us instead of just a few hundred. You know, and we know how to ignore a few hundred. They've been doing that over and over again, and so, but they can't ignore a few million. They wouldn't be able to do that. You know, so this is important work that we're talking about trying to do.
Right. And
So for
thankfully,
people, I'm sorry, sis. So if
go
people
ahead.
want to find out more, they can go to the Spirit of Mandela dot org. Is it .com or .org?
I think it's .org. I believe. I'm not sure. You know,
I
my
can I can look it up right here really quickly so that I can
Where's
type it in.
Jaleel? Jaleel, you listening? Put it in the chat.
Yeah,
Let's see. Yes, it's .org. I think it's
.org.
.org.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
yeah.
thought it was .org.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So they can find out more. They can reach us that way. It's Spirit of Mandela 1 at gmail.com is the website. Um, I mean the email if they want to get in touch. Um, we're open. We have monthly meetings. The third Saturday of every month is a general meeting where we invite people to come in to see what it's about and see how they fit in, what committees they'd like to join, how they'd like to be a part of this work. Everybody can't do the same thing, but everybody can do something, and it's up to
Right.
people to know where their skills are. Like I have skills, technology is not one of them, as Manney knows well, because she's my Instagram 101 professor.
I got you for life, dequi. Got you.
I love and appreciate you for that.
Right. So yes, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you both so much. So much for being
Thank
here with
you.
me. I will never stop saying this. It is such an honor. I'm actually trying not to scream. Because my friends told me that I need to relax. So I'm trying not to scream, but this is a huge deal for me. Not even just as an activist, but just as an educator. It really, really is an honor, such an honor to be speaking with both of you tonight. So thank you so much.
I'm
For
all
those
with you also.
of,
That's right. That's right. Ditto.
woo, okay. Okay, thank you so much. And for those of you who are on the live, please be sure to look up Spirit of Mandela Coalition online, spiritofmandela.org. And Jaquie also gave the email, and I'll also repost this when this live goes on my page. So people will be able to, of course, also follow you both as well. And I see Lioness Val. I remember I met her when we did the artist chat. I think, was it
She's one
last
of us.
year?
She's one
Yeah.
of
Yes. And she is doing so much work with the Sundiata Akoli campaign,
us.
and
Yeah.
it's just really, really amazing. So you guys should follow her as well. There's also one more person that Jalil mentioned earlier, Rochelle McGee, who is the longest I think the longest
Yeah.
standing political prisoner in jail to this day. I think he said 53 years if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But I would encourage all of you to please go out of your way to look up these different people and to learn more about them. Because knowledge, as we can clearly see, is power, and we need to be able to pass this on to those who are coming on afterwards. So again, thank you both so much. It
You
is an
are,
honor. I
you
will of
are
course
welcome.
keep in touch. Dequi,
Better.
we are due for an Instagram lesson. So I would definitely text you
Okay.
so that we can talk more about that. Thank you both
Thank you.
so much. Thank
And
you so
thank you to all of the folks that joined in here and were here for all part or some of the time. We cannot do this work without you. So
Hey,
we're planting seeds and hopefully people will take you up on that offer. But thank you so much, sister, daughter, Manney, for allowing us into this space. I love you and I appreciate you greatly.
I love you too. Thank you so much. I love you too. Thank you so much. I learned so much from both of you all the time. It doesn't matter what it is. Also, what we need to do, let us support Dequi and Sekou, Jalil, Sundiata, everyone. It's really, really important for you guys to also help in your funds as well. If you have any events that you want them to come to and speak at, please reach out to them so that they can be there, so that we can properly support them, because this is important
Oh,
work and we need
right.
everybody to know about it.
Or
I
reach
will,
out to you. If they don't know how to reach out to us, reach out to you. You can get in touch with us.
of course, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What an
Keep
amazing
well.
chat. I'm gonna I'm gonna end the chat now. But all of the information that was mentioned here, I will make sure that I included in the caption for this video. So please be on the lookout for that. Thank you all so much. And thank you so much, Jalil Muntikane, for joining us tonight too. We honor
Yeah, for
you
real.
so much.
Jalil is saying register for the class. There's an
Right.
ongoing class.
Yeah, she's gonna put it in the chat.
Okay.
Right. Yes. And Jalil, you can actually, if you want, you can type everything up so I can include it in the caption. And if there's anything that y'all want me to post, please feel free to just send it to me and I'll make sure it's up. Oh, and also, dequi, Sekou, Jalil, I remember I was telling you, dequi, earlier, if you need a flyer or anything, I'm your girl. I got you. Don't even
Yeah,
worry about it. Hit me up.
Okay.
got
I'll
it.
take you up on that.
Yes,
That's what I told her.
I am more than willing to assist. So thank you both so much.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sis.
Alrighty.
Okay, peace.
Bye.
Peace.
Peace.
So what do I do? Just X?
Yeah.
Okay.